Welcome to House Rule, a podcast about role-playing. This is our 4th episode in our long, distinguished line of episodes about awesome things.
Yes.
Oh, yep.
I will be your host for this intro. My name is Lee. Next to me, to my left is...
Ed.
Jeff.
And I'm Ebo because we never change positions.
That's true. I am almost always on top.
We're like Thunderdome.
Right. So we'll move right along into a quick overview of Free RPG Day. And then right after that, we'll talk about failed games and why they fail. Jeff's got the clap. Jeff's got the clap.
Oh, we went to Free RPG Day.
We certainly did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we ended up deciding to take a trip to a place that's about 45 minutes away because, sadly, our local gaming store did not do Free RPG Day.
Not that we're aware of, anyway, I guess.
Yeah, we didn't really go and ask.
Yeah,
We
but
should have.
it wasn't on the www.freerpgday.com. It wasn't on the retailer locator.
And now defunct or uninteresting website.
And the only other
next
place...
year it'll be lively.
Yeah, the only other place that's that was close
with quotes around it.
was about 2 hours away,
Yeah.
and that's
That wasn't
just
not worth the trip.
Anyway, it was a tiny bookstore.
It was a tiny bookstore that had, I kid you not, it was like a section of figures that was about maybe 15 feet wide, and a space for a table that people were actually playing D&D at. I believe they were playing.
Yeah, they were playing
the Dark Sun thing.
The Dark Sun
Blood Sand Arena or something.
mini adventure. Yeah, I don't remember what it's called. Blood Sand Arena sounds correct.
And they were actually playing that, and all it really was like there were comic books around them. They didn't really have much room, and how to say it is like 8 by 10 too.
So
and
it wasn't that much of an event, is basically what I would say.
It wasn't that much of an event. We got there. What we ended up seeing there was Death Watch Final Sanctuary. Which we have on the table. Final Sanction.
Ebo no can talk good.
Which is
for the Warhammer 40k roleplay system.
Fantasy Flight Games.
Sounds right.
Yep.
New
Not out yet.
quick start rules
Yep.
for Death Watch, which would be like the third, using the same basic rules.
Totally awesome. I love Space Marines.
Who doesn't love Space Marines?
We'll come back to it.
They also had a short module for Pathfinder.
Yep.
Which included pre-generated characters of the new PC classes.
Of the new PC classes.
That's the thing that's coming out in August that I was thinking of. Advanced players got Pathfinder.
And the iconics. The
Yeah.
iconic characters
New
for
iconic
that.
characters, which
is
pretty-
like
More
an awesome
excellent Pathfinder
half-orc.
art as well.
Inquisitor, yeah, the Pathfinder art is just
and we got to see
fantastic.
pre-generated character who made a terrible decision with their stats. Hey, who takes 8 Constitution, really?
Yeah, guess who? The blind girl.
Yeah. Anyway,
Confluence of events that
she
gives
was
you bad eyesight and
she's
no
apparently
hit points.
rocking a D8, and
And that was it.
Okay.
so
and they also had 4th edition D&D
Yep.
adventure with new material for the Dark Sun campaign setting. That's
Yep.
Which I am extremely
going to
excited
be coming
about.
out soon.
they put and this was now don't get me wrong, I like the other two, but this packet was good too. They had a lot of
material.
information
A double-sided map?
about the area that it was in. I didn't read all of it, but I read the first few pages. Really interesting. A double-sided map and player cards.
Yeah, like glossy cards for each character with all the
Really well done.
Sexy.
A lot
They
of
really tore the lid off.
a lot of money looked like
The production value
was
was
spent.
really high on every material I saw, especially considering it was free.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, remember Sword and Fist, that book you spent like $20 on? It was higher than that.
there's noting that there was also an Exalted adventure.
There's an Exalted that we
have
have.
never really been Exalted players.
We might play it. I
don't
picked it up anyway just
Ooh.
because I was
I'll play it.
excited to.
Pretty.
It was very pretty.
I'd give it a try,
Glossy,
but you know,
nice looking.
yeah, I guess we've said a few things about each of the things, but you know, like
Was Was there also a GURPS one there, or was that
There
just
was a GURPS one.
There was
that
a GURPS
like,
one. I think all of the material was geared towards, hey, here, you can take this little pamphlet and play a short session. It wasn't like these stupid little expansion things that people would really need. It's like
No.
you could use it
Right.
to kind of get into a game and give it a
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah.
And the Death Watch
And I
thing
think that's
is-
pretty much the point of the free RPG day is to get the word out about new stuff.
And it's good because people are going to do that
From what I-
anyway if
from
they
what
don't
I
have
looked
those
at
materials
of the
illegally.
of the different ones, the 4th edition one seemed like it was the most could finish in one session of them. The Death Watch one, now that I've read it a bunch because I'm intending to run this little freebie thing,
Yeah, we'll have
it seems
Podcast
like
about that.
if you have a group of people who are dedicated to role playing a lot, to taking a lot of time with their decisions, it could be like a good 9-10 hours of role playing in there. It's pretty beefy.
Nice.
Got a lot of stuff going on.
I guess it sort of depends too how much like depth the players want in it, but
Yeah.
I'm in for the ride.
The pre-gen characters are interesting. It's geared for 3 to 4 players and 1 GM, and the whole I'm leery personally about percentile dice, and I have been basically my entire life.
Yes.
But I'm willing to give it a shot, and I think the system looks better than I originally gave it credit
I've heard
for.
good things about is it Dark Heresy
Yeah.
and Rogue Trader.
Yep.
Rogue Trader appeals to me in certain ways, but Death Watch even more so. I'm excited to give it a try.
Now, for those of you who know the Warhammer universe, Death Watch
Not it.
in it you play a kill team of battle brothers from the Adeptus Astartes. Yeah, I just dropped a whole book full of lingo on you. The idea is that you play an elite squad of alien killers,
Space Marines.
Space Marines,
Right.
being the most iconic and immediately awesome looking things from the Warhammer universe, and you get to play a bunch of those. Finally,
From someone who doesn't know anything about Warhammer, this sounds like Halo to me.
yeah, you
probably
could say
pretty
that
close.
a little bit. It's a dark future setting. The whole Warhammer 40K universe is grim and terrible.
I'd say don't hate mail me because Warhammer came first, but seriously, send the hate mail. We could use an email.
Yeah, I guess
2
I
emails.
was also
We'll take
pretty.
anything.
I haven't played a whole lot of 4th edition recently, but I was excited about the Dark Sun stuff.
Oh,
We are fans of Dark Sun.
I don't really get into campaign settings very much, but Dark Sun is like it's different. Whereas, not to slam on Eberron or Forgotten Realms, but they're pretty
Samey.
standard fantasy. With some different twists unique to them.
Mm-hmm.
But Dark Sun is just like a whole different breed of animal, and I'm eager to see what they do with the setting. This time around.
There's a lot of cool. I saw a bunch of different class variations that looked weird to me, and then also Thrycreen bug people. For those of you who love to have a character with
looks
a
like
20-year lifespan,
They're doing a lot of new stuff for everybody available. A lot of new things you have to get used to in the setting, like weapons made out of wood or stone.
the setting itself trying to kill you actively. I think it's Dark Sun has always been to me geared towards the GM who is an ass and wants to make his players really have to work to survive. And I'm really
They're just
hoping
miserable.
No
all
player
around.
character sets out to die in a quicksand bog, but if
It
you're in Dark
happens.
Sun, you better be prepared for the contingency.
it's a cool setting, and I really want to see how it makes the transition into 4th
Yeah.
edition, especially after having been absent for so long.
And
With any luck, they'll bring back some more long absent
I
campaign settings like
Spelljammer.
I browsed through the Pathfinder module as well, and I would say it's a fairly standard outing. It's got a really nice detailed map and encounters for an entire basically adventure through the place.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just a tower, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like a first level dungeon.
It's got
but it's got the pre-generated characters, which are
Yeah.
it has one for each of the new classes that's coming out in the Advanced Player's Guide. So you have a lot of access to this on the Pathfinder SRD website. They've had playtest versions of them up for a long time, but it's it's nice to see them committing them to paper. There are some minor tweaks that you can already see. also, like, just an idea of how you're actually going to play these things is really interesting to see.
It's got the standard hallmarks of the Paizo publishing stuff for Pathfinder. I mean, it's
the high production value.
Value.
High production
the art
value,
is,
very nice.
Equally excellent across pretty much all their stuff.
Yep, fantastic.
It looks. I know it's been play tested like the classes have been play tested like crazy, stupid long.
I don't know what it is about seeing them in print and the actual material from Paizo, but I just like all of those classes are more appealing to me now than they were just reading them off of their playtest form.
I think there's something about having the print version
character
of something in your hands means a little bit more than reading it off of the internet, I think.
The internet sucks, except for our podcast.
That's true.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, they've been playtesting. They finished like February or something. They closed their forums to that.
I don't know, but
anyway, what was the other Exalted? I don't think anyone here has really looked at
so
that.
So far, none of us have read it.
I looked at it
a
little bit.
Not many pages. Do you have anything?
All I noticed was that it is largely foreign to me, and because I had taken an immediate interest in running the Death Watch one, I did not read a lot of it.
Oh, that's how much I looked at it too.
Yeah, I guess
I saw the cover and the art was pretty.
The art is nice.
The cover was nice.
My one,
I don't want to leave it at that.
The one thing lacking, and I'm not gonna.
Well, we're not qualified not to.
I'm not gonna blame anybody for this because I guess it might be just as well that they didn't. But on Free RPG Day, pretty much every year, White Wolf comes out with a new World of Darkness sub game, and they always post quick start rules on Free RPG Day. And there's nothing coming out this year at Gen Con, I don't
those
think.
bastards, they should have thought about your feelings.
They have other books coming out.
Did Geist come out early, or what? Or was that just last year?
Geist came out,
Wow.
They usually did like August releases every year or something.
I thought it was generally they did a Free RPG Day quick start rules, and then they released it at Gen Con.
Okay.
Huh.
But I don't know.
Maybe they
for
just
sure
don't have anything.
And it might not be every year either. It just seems like it to me. I know that they don't have anything new on the offer yet, and that's just their trend is now to not just bring out games on the rigid schedule, but rather bring them out when they need to be.
Well, no, they got all these source expansion books coming out, so we're gonna have Old World of Darkness, Middle World of Darkness, and then whatever in this.
Well, all I'm saying is
World of Darkness, Dark Ages, World of Darkness, Cavemen.
I'm specifically not trying to blame them. I'm just saying that I missed that because I follow their stuff. And
I'm really looking forward to playing a magical caveman.
Yeah, that was I really was hoping for a new White Wolf thing to wrap my paws around.
A new White Wolf thing that wasn't Exalted.
No, if you guys didn't realize it before just now, Ebo is a furry. And when he says paws, he means his fursuit. He's wearing it right now.
That is...
Those aren't tattoos?
That is so true.
You told me those were tats, dude.
It's very elaborate.
They are. I've got the cat tail and I'm actually stroking my tail, and I have been for this whole segment.
All right. Well, I think that this conversation is ended because I have got to go throw up.
Well,
he's lying.
The final thing.
Throw up.
The final thing is he's staring at me now. In a provocative sort of way.
It's not provocative.
All we really saw there was GURPS, Pathfinder, Death Watch,
4th
edition, and Exalted. And I was really hoping for
Pathfinder before.
some of Pathfinder again.
Exalted.
I was really hoping for some of the other stuff that they had
Actually,
there.
I would be interested
and it was
to
kind of
if
sad.
you guys had different stuff in your city, I don't know if that's like if that could have even happened, but if there was different stuff in different cities, I'd be interested to know.
Else, I'd like to hear about other things that.
Yeah, write in. Tell us if you saw if you thought it was good.
We're pandering for emails, but we'll take anything, and we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, one of the things I think was like they were supposed to have commemorative dice. They're supposed to have
really
just
sad about the dice.
A ton of those would have been so awesome to get.
It took us a while when we got in the shop to awkwardly find the free stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, we
They weren't really advertising free stuff here.
we just kind of walked in and were like, this is a bookstore.
Not a gaming store.
But I very much appreciate that they actually took the time to do free RPG day there, and I'm still a little peeved that we didn't get anything over here. But that's the way the Cookie Monsters cookies crumble.
Right in next year. We'll see if we can't get them to participate.
Yeah, I think I might just.
Cookie Monster will actually show up at the store.
I think I might just go over there and talk to him about how a good idea it is to do this, and you guys should probably do the same thing.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Moving on. So in this segment, our natural.
Emo. Just
Why do you want to wait for Jeff? He's not doing anything.
Dude.
God, I'm just going to push you off your chair. So this is our Natural GM Enhancement segment where we talk about our GMing experiences and try to give you guys some insight into the things that worked or did not work for us. Today we're going to be talking about failed games and why they fail, which is a subject that a lot of us have quite a bit of experience in.
Oh, yes.
We really do.
Yes. This is a subject very dear to my heart.
Of course
Not
it is.
dear, more like it plagues my nightmares.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Never mind.
One thing that bears mentioning, when we're talking about having a lot of experience with this, we run a lot of games, like quite a few.
Every one of the podcasters here is a GM.
Mm-hmm.
At some point or another. Not necessarily all at the same time.
And we have all had failed games,
Oh,
probably directly proportional to the number of games we've all run.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
I would say Ed more than anyone else, thusly more failed games than anyone else. Congratulations, Ed.
Well, thank you. I do my best.
We made up a trophy just for you that we'll give you on air never.
We never gave him a trophy.
I was going to say, yeah, it gives me such great pleasure and shame that I am receiving this trophy today.
We actually could do like a RPG Razzies sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, we could do that, where we just razz our own RPGs
Yes,
all day.
fortunately, it would only be relevant to us.
That is true.
That doesn't even sound fun.
That's
It
true.
would, it's just that would be a cavalcade of misery.
That's just hurtful.
Yeah. Just
So-
me making fun of you.
You know
which
why
is
you
what I'm going to
suck.
do in this segment.
I'll tell you why you suck. In this little segment we call Razzies.
So, okay, I'd like to start off talking about one of the reasons that a game could fail, and that is that the GM loses interest. And we've all...
That's a big one.
Now, I started with this because Ed was the person who had talked about, having a lot of failed games, and I would say that he loses interest the quickest.
Yeah, I do think one of the first posts I put on our blog a little while ago now was about this disease that I have where I'm constantly eager to run a game, but it's like any given game can only hold my attention for so long. And I think it's like I have these big plans and I'm like, I'm never going to get sick of this. And it's never like I'm so sick of it. It's just like my attention span is like that of a goldfish. I just lose it and then I'm
Right on to a
else.
different RPG.
And I think anyone who's GM'd has had a failed game because of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a wide variety of reasons you could lose interest. You could lose interest in the system. Like we've had games where we were running a lot of D&D or running a lot of White Wolf, and we just burned out on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could be unsatisfied with the style of GMing that you've been doing or the way the game's been running, and eventually you just, you don't feel like doing it anymore.
Well, and I think that the biggest reason interest is lost a lot of the time is because something else that's new or different comes along, and it's like, hey, I'm more into that now.
And here's something that we don't do that I would like to encourage everybody to do because I appreciate when they do it. Tell your players when a game has failed to the point that you're not going to run it anymore, because we don't do that very often, and we are left hanging almost constantly. And that's really irksome to me because I have these characters and games in the back of my head that I'm thinking about, and I would just stop thinking about them if people would be like, hey, I'm done. But no one ever does that.
Just the same, none of us here have actually done that yet.
I did that. I did that yesterday. Zing. How do you like that?
Okay.
Kind of.
I've done it after the fact.
Yeah.
Like
Long
I've
enough
sort of
after the fact.
I've sort
that
of
it makes
I've sort of confirmed that's never happening again. Here's why. Done.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I actually quit the game, I was like, we're just going to set that aside.
Yeah. And it is nice to know from a player's perspective, and it's also nice to admit if you're the GM, and that you can just get over it instead of saying, "Oh no, I'll come back to that. I'll come back to it, no problem."
Yeah. So what's something that you can do to prevent I don't know, GM burnout or losing interest in your game or just wanting to switch to the next new thing, or how can you prevent that?
I think stopping your game at an appropriate point, like when it needs to be stopped, is extremely valuable. You know, like knowing when to end the game. Like to wrap it up is a good idea.
If you've run into that wall more than once, I would say you should maybe think about trying to plan a game that isn't that you don't intend to go on forever, that has like a prescribed end point.
Mm-hmm.
A handful of sessions.
It's much easier to extend a game that is still going strong than it is to necessarily let a game go once it's flopped.
Another thing I'd say, like you could also leave it kind of open, yet still like you could run a Pathfinder game from level 1 to 3, run a 5-6 session game, and at the end of that, the game's over. It comes to a conclusion, and maybe you'll run something else in the same world, or maybe you'll otherwise just let people, if they like their characters, keep playing them in a different context.
Mm-hmm.
But if it ends there, that'll still be satisfying.
Do most of our failed games actually come from us planning too far ahead, or are most of our failed games like, I'm going to run this with some stuff in mind, and then I'm not doing that
Honestly,
anymore.
I don't know if I could say most, but I know exactly what you're talking about, and that is a big problem for me. I used to do this a lot worse because I am now aware that it's a problem, but I would just be planning this climactic exchange of scenes, one adventure that was going to just bring the whole thing together, and you're like, I'm not even halfway there, and I just don't have anything to bridge the gap. So it's either, bridge the gap by making the end part closer, just like bringing that down, which you don't want to do, or just abandon it.
Yeah, you don't want to jump the shark, but there's like a grind to
and
get
sometimes
to the...
you just overplan.
If you make your own game a grind, that is a buzzword that I am impressed by how appropriate it feels to me, because I've done it before.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, to put into perspective, I yesterday admitted to myself and most of the people here that there's a 4th edition game that I just do not have the ambition or intent to really run again. That, it was like, I've realized that that's really not the way I prefer to GM, so I just stopped.
You're so brave.
I think we should talk about ending failed games, but on the topic we were just talking about, I have one more thing about how to prevent failing from just the GM stops running, loses interest. One thing I've found as far as losing interest because you get excited about the new thing is like one thing you can think about is that this new thing you're excited about might have a home in your current game. It might not be a very perfect home, but it might work. I
mean, you're the champion of running different game systems in the same setting or world, and I don't know if that's a little bit what you're talking about, because I know you've done that. We'll say a multitude of times.
Not really, I guess. Like I ran like a sandbox mage game, and I like sandbox, but if you play enough of that and the players spend however many hours discussing and plotting and scheming, it grates on everyone. And it's like, I want to run something a little more epic. Yeah. I just threw the game in that direction and jumped out of the mage box, and I ended up actually completing the game.
Yeah, and it was entertaining basically throughout.
For my money, I had fun with the sandbox element of it. I could have done that for a lot longer.
Yeah, of course you could have.
Well,
yeah, how do you like that?
I never had a chance to play Mage the Awakening before. I had run it multiple times, and I was eager to try it.
It's just, and maybe that's part of the game too, because it's like when the characters get powerful, it's like, yeah, it's a sandbox, and you can put the sand wherever the hell you want. But it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Different, that brings up another good point. Running different types of games, like running the same kind of game over and over again, like, if you're running sandbox game after sandbox game and dragging
Right.
them all out, like, you can get tired of that, and you'll end up just running, like, run a game and then give up on it and start a new game because you have a cool idea, and then give up on it, and you'll never really finish what you're doing because
Yeah.
you just keep on running the
That's
same
the type
kind
of game too that takes a little while to build up steam. So
Yeah.
if you do 2 of those in a row, you're almost setting the second one up to be a dud, in my opinion, just because it's like you're expecting the pace of the end of the previous one, and you're starting with the beginning pace,
Yeah,
which
and it's
is
difficult to keep
nothing
that up.
alike.
running
my
it
opinion.
running in different types of games is challenging because you might step outside of your your comfort zone of GMing style, and also it gives you a chance to recharge your batteries a little bit.
So what are some other reasons games fail?
Ooh, players.
Let's blame the players.
It's possible to blame the players. I think a lot of the times it is the players.
Well, it's
yeah.
always the
players-
GM's.
It's
fault,
always the GM's fault in the end.
but it's
True.
also
Usually
sometimes
the
the
player's
player's
fault.
fault.
I'm sure there are plenty of people who don't agree with that.
I
but-
would say here's a very good example of how we could blame the players is like if the players defy the GM's expectations so much that the GM is no longer running the game that they had set out to.
Yeah.
That I would say, granted, it's both both sides' fault, but
Well, let's take that example for a
Sure.
second, and I don't have a specific game in mind. You might,
I do.
but that in that example, what I'm
Redneck.
thinking is if it's clear, like if the GM has made it clear what the game is, and then the players are just dicks and just sort of do whatever they want outside of that and don't try to
Right.
cooperate, then it's definitely only the player's fault. I
Yeah.
would say that.
Yeah, I mean, the players can be assholes to the point that the GM no longer wants to run the game because it's not what they intended to run.
Yeah.
And
But that communication is not going to start on the player's side.
no. I mean, I think that it's important to, if you want to avoid that, to communicate before the game starts about what kind of game you're trying to run.
Yeah,
Or the
but
GM can just start killing their players.
killing
Killing the
player
players
characters,
is
you mean?
completely different than killing the characters.
No, I meant.
Oh, you meant the players. Oh, okay. Hey, is that why we haven't seen for so long? He's in your freezer, isn't
He's
he?
gone.
Okay.
He left town. Wink.
I think he's in both of our freezers.
That's grim.
Yeah, well, that was just an example. I feel like granted, it's usually partly or mostly the GM's fault too, because I know a lot of times that happens to me all the time, and I think part of it is I always, before the player characters exist, I'm always imagining the most vanilla possible group, like a little dash of everything that makes the game go. For a game like D&D, it's a little simpler. You have, like, what are the odds that the classes are going to be, the setup is going to be something so radical that I can't
6
handle it.
strikers.
But like World of Darkness game, for instance, it's almost impossible to plan for what the players are going to do because you have no idea what they're going to be, and the options are so open to them to be whatever they want.
Yeah, I used to do this thing where I would like come up with pretty blank slated backgrounds that I could hopefully just like toss characters into, and I would always just toss out half of those because it was just like, yeah, none of this is appropriate.
Yeah. I think it's really possible to plan a game a certain way and then end up with a freak squad of characters that you can't do
Well,
anything with.
if you have, I guess, well, I'm sort of moving into the solution sphere here, but the solution for this
solutions.
problem is probably communication.
Yeah.
Like,
Boo.
if you have expectations about how you want your game to turn out, you need to communicate those expectations with the player.
Yeah.
And then the players need to obviously cooperate, which we don't have much of a problem with. Every time like things have been communicated to the players, it seemed to be pretty successful.
Yeah, we had one failure with that. It was just miscommunication between the GM and the players, and that was one of Jeff's games, and that game failed because we all thought that we were supposed to. You want us to make all of our own backgrounds, blah blah blah, and have ideas what we wanted to do, and we assumed that we wouldn't necessarily be doing that together. Like, we had our own ideas set out from the start, and that ended up being like one person. It was like 11,
one person hogged time, and then
7,
the next
8
person?
people, and it was just one person took a long amount of time, and then another person would take that, and 3/4 of the people are sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
And honestly, I think with that, like, I won't claim to have had in mind specifically that you guys would be working together from the start. I didn't have the presence of mind to even mention it. And then when it started going wrong, I was like, oh, this is really boring for a lot of people. What's going on? Oh, they're all doing their individual thing. That's something, I mean, from then on, I sort of made it a point if they were to really make up a lot about stuff to be like, keep in mind, we all got to work together.
Yeah, and then, it just, by that point, ending the game was, like, no one could hold it against Jeff when he ended that game because all of our players had their own things going, or all the characters had their own things going on, and it would have just been really difficult to try to mash them together in some way that, that didn't function right. It didn't feel natural.
Maybe I just have brain damage, but I don't hold it against him now. But at the time, I didn't understand why it was ending. I was having fun with that game.
It's your brain damage that causes it.
Yeah, I guess
Probably is my brain damage.
I guess after the fact, it seemed to me, at least, I mean, even before after the fact, it seemed, before it ended, it seemed very clear that I didn't know exactly why he was ending it, but I knew that what was happening in the game is not what should have been happening.
Exactly.
And I got to the point where I was like, yeah, maybe I should just throw my character under a bridge and
let him sit there.
You see, I never had anything like that. I guess I think I don't really remember being very frustrated. It's possible that I was, but at that point, I think I was sort of acclimatized to being frustrated during some games.
There were definitely players there who weren't having fun, and that's generally a good sign that something's got to change. I would not say that's generally a good sign that the game's got to stop. It's just in that situation, the game stopping was a effective and convenient fix since we were all D&D 4 just got released and we were all pumped to play that.
Yeah, I mean, I still wanted to play the game, but I can understand that it at least needed to be stopped or trimmed, or we needed to have our bottoms spanked for being bad children.
Yeah, I mean, that was a clear case of the GM and player expectations being different.
Yeah, and actually, I can't even claim to have expected, anything special. Like I was just blindsided.
You seem to take it the best when your games fail, I think.
I mean, I run a lot of experimental games, and when you run an experimental game, you need to know that one of the risks is that it will fail.
Yeah, I think that's another good point. Is experimental games have a pretty high failure rate. I think.
Well,
they can. I mean, the point being that it's hard to judge the way the players will react in an experimental game setting, etc. And the chance for failure is higher there, unless you have really open players who are, who will do anything. Which we will, given $5 or $10,
and
do anything.
So, what exactly was that game called again? Just so we can reference it.
That
later.
Was Zero Heaven Part 2, I thought, but I could be...
Yes, that was one of the episodes of that.
So
episode
Zero Heaven
4.
Part 2
I don't even remember episode 1
was a failed game.
I didn't run episode 1.
Then why did you even have one?
Hey, it was in the history.
It's like Star Wars.
It's very important.
So you
Only
run
he
it
didn't
later?
ever do it.
No.
He's going to run it later and then introduce
I could
Jar
have.
Jar Binks.
I haven't. I'm going to have a silly talking alien, yes.
Well,
Good idea.
I'm glad that you had that in mind. Slowly talking alien.
We had another game that almost failed, I think. I don't know if it was exactly going to fail, but it was the mage game that we were talking about earlier, and that was
What?
I don't even think that game had a name, did it?
Yeah, that was Futuro Draconis.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I still hate you for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that one. It didn't fail. It succeeded.
It
And like you
succeeded.
said, you changed the direction of the game a little bit near the end, a little bit / a lot, and that seemed to give it its second wind, I think.
I guess I don't mean that it should have failed or it could have failed in its current thing, but if we, I guess, me specifically, hadn't toned it down a little bit,
The characters
it could have
weren't
gotten
getting
a little
along.
too much.
The players weren't getting along. I was getting a little bored with and frustrated with what was going on. I mean, there were a lot of factors where it could have turned out a lot worse.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
and
everyone sort of came together, and it ended up being pretty cool.
yeah, success story.
We don't have a lot of those.
Mm.
Usually when a game starts going downhill, it's pretty doomed.
Yeah. Did we have any other reasons for failed games? Thought we did.
Yeah, no.
Well,
definitely
we didn't go too deep into like interpersonal conflicts and things like those.
Yeah.
Partly because it's not really a button for our group. It's not something that we're all that worried
do.
about.
Yeah, drama's not really our thing for the most part.
Drama and fighting, yeah. I guess if you have players who are really at each other's throats the whole time, you might just quit the game and run another one just as an excuse to not put those players together again.
The only time I can ever remember that happening was way, way back when Sean was running Lanta 2, and two of our friends hated each other to the point that one of them just stopped coming. That would be Arliss, if you're curious.
That was a good solution, though. He didn't
That
quit
was-
the game.
Yeah, he just left.
That was
And
a very
great.
successful game.
It was. That game ran for a long time and
That game had
satisfying ending.
3 subsequent iterations.
Yep. At least-
Anyway, I'm just saying, yeah, that was a large group as
Mhm.
well, which that was never a game killer for that particular campaign, but I could say that is
Been
a gaming group related problem that could potentially disrupt a game if you have too many or too few players in theory, but that's never really
I think
happened.
too many players is the more likely one.
I think,
At least for
yeah.
us.
Well, I guess
I guess
the
too few consistent players is one.
Is
would
it
be
the
one.
atmosphere? Is that why it doesn't work
I think
anymore?
that too many players makes
Like-
the game too casual.
Well,
Is it the sofas and
You
the
had
sitting
mentioned-
back and the?
We talked about your Zero Heaven game that dwindled because we were all sort of going in different directions, and it's like even in a game with really high like group cohesion where the adventure is taking place in the room where everyone is together, if the group is too big, you're still going to get players who are distracted and not in it.
Yeah.
a sleeping player,
Because it's
the
like-
PSP playing player.
Only so many people can loot the body, question the NPCs. When you're fighting, everybody's taking a turn, but even that, if the group is large enough, you're spending like 15 minutes or more between each turn of yours.
If combat rounds take a long time, that's a really clear sign that people are going to get bored because combat is going to take so long, and there's going to be side conversations, and it's just like this. Combat is supposed to be exciting, and
Right.
it ends up being the boring part of the game that everyone's kind of falls
I
out
would
of it.
say, like,
Yeah.
ultimately, I don't think that the combat is really the big issue. It's like when you're basically bartering for the GM's time. In combat, everybody gets their turn, everybody gets a fair shake. Out of combat, everybody is basically competing for the interest of the GM, and if there's enough players, it's like a couple people are doing important things that the GM's kind of juggling in his head. Anybody else who joins is going to get less attention and have their queries taken less seriously.
And how do you deal with that?
I would say
Become brilliant.
Yeah, I guess it's definitely both of those things, really. I mean, I've gotten bored during combats. We had it where towards the end of 3.5, high level, you will sit there for 10, 15 minutes while 7 other people take their turn before you.
and their turn includes 8 attacks each.
Yeah, and, it's just, you're going to get bored during that time, or at least we obviously do.
Yeah,
And-
and I think part of that is that when you have a lot of people, like, people aren't necessarily paying attention as much during like, so when their turn comes up, like if you have a spellcaster, they don't really know what to do.
I think there's a clear solution for the combat aspect, but the thing Ed was talking about, the GM time aspect, is so much harder for the GM to solve.
And it didn't occur to me until I was halfway through that thought that I think what it is really like the GM can't, and perhaps the players shouldn't expect them to be able to juggle that many thoughts at once. If you're going in enough different directions, they're going to be completely confused about everything.
Yeah, there's also the problem with if a person wants to do something else, and that's obviously going to take up a lot of time. And really, when there's just, again, a lot of people there, you can't have everyone throwing out completely new ideas each time something has to be discussed. There's going to be 3 or 4 people doing it, and the other how many else just sitting there, and they want to do something. So out comes the PSP, or out
comes the pillow, and somebody puts their head on it. It
or
only
just
really takes one distracted player.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope. Actually, it's just one person distracted can distract another person,
I guess,
just as easily.
Also,
and it's not necessarily you getting pulled into the other conversation when it's not your turn or something. That can happen, but you can be distracted by what they're doing. I mean, in my mind, I just get very frustrated when someone pulls out a PSP or there is just noise that I cannot. That when I'm trying to do something, I can't handle it.
I think it's like you feel like a chump when you're playing, when you're the player who's like, oh yeah, I'm really trying to pay attention, and you look over and there's like a guy sleeping and someone with a PSP, and it's just like, why am I really focusing? Why am I doing this?
I think it's kind of can be frustrating to be the one person who's not involved who is still trying to be involved, and I'm gonna point a finger at Jeff here when I describe a scenario where a player might hatch a plan completely unrelated to any ongoing plot, just basically in order to be doing something. Like in the most recent incarnation of our friend Sean's Lanta game, you essentially tried to establish a church, I believe,
to
a god that you did not worship. Well, you hadn't before then, and almost no one else was really involved in this, and so it was just like a labor that you would occasionally do because we were off doing other things and you weren't there.
Yeah, I guess that character, I was sort of looking for something. It's like, I guess I eventually got the picture of that I was pretty much supposed to sit back and just kind of let things unfold. But at the same time, we were being prompted to do stuff, so it was like, well, whatever. I don't know. I can't claim that character was a very serious character. I wouldn't ever say that was a good character. I think I was kind of falling out of the game system.
Neutral something, wasn't
falling out of the game, yeah.
Anyway, that was just an example that came to mind of bad things that can happen when one player gets bored.
And on that note, I was going to say, when we were talking about solving these 2 different issues of the same sort of thing, like, I think the GM can solve the combat slowness.
Oh, yeah, they certainly can.
The GM, if the GM is motivated and really on top of things and very, I don't know, I want to say present or
responsible,
has a decent amount of wherewithal at the time, like, you can keep the players on task and make sure that the turns fly by crazy. But they will not do it on their own. 2 or 3 of them at a time will, but there's going to be 2 people every once in a while that just fall out of it, and the GM has to do it. And that can do it, but the GM cannot, at least as far as I know, the GM can't, like, prevent the thing where one player takes up a bunch of time.
I'm going to share a couple of my personal secrets. This might not be the greatest thing to share, as I'm currently GMing a game with all of you.
Get you.
I tend to, when somebody is really falling out of it, I tend to kick their ass if it's in combat. Joe, our friend who plays the PSP, he gets the brunt of that more often than anyone else does. Like, yeah. And maybe it's a little bit me being spiteful, but it also draws him back into it, which is why I do it still.
It's definitely you being spiteful.
But But like you know, I see him
Sight's
pull out
the
the
best
PSP, and I'm
medicine.
like, God, he
Like
stopped
the
paying attention. Well,
Merriam-Webster
better
of
start hurting his
sight.
character, and then he starts paying attention more. You know, and also when people start getting distracted, I've taken to shouting at them, like if it's their turn, like sharply addressing their turn until they get the idea that I don't like that, and that works with Joe pretty well too.
Well, even sometimes in combat, you see people just relegating themselves to not even trying, just going, here, I'm done, just so that their
turn
can be done,
right?
right? Or they're just frustrated that that everyone else is going to take a long time, and they're like, oh, I can make my turn go fast. Everyone else should be able to.
One thing that Ed was saying, and I don't remember if we said this on a segment or if we were just talking about this, the whole honey vinegar thing.
Honey vinegar? No, we didn't talk about that.
Anyway,
here.
Oh, no, I think I remember what the discussion you're talking about, though.
Yeah,
Continue.
I
Sweet and
ran.
disgusting.
I ran a game where the entire
High five.
point, or like one of the really big goals of the game, not the entire point, but a big goal was to have really, really fast combat, and that aspect of it was very successful. And I just gave bonus XP if the combat was really fast and no one was like dawdling on their turn.
The solution that Jeff had come up with in that scenario was that we got XP, but there was 3 to 4 of us each time, and we were
it was
all
a more
hardcore.
manageable number of players.
If
Yeah.
that game spanned a particularly long range of levels, as I recall,
Yeah.
I remember that being like feeling really motivated by that at the beginning of the game. Like I was just Johnny on the spot. I was playing a cleric, so I would have my spell or whatever melee attack prepared. Like I was definitely sure what I was going to do, and I was just racing. I felt like I tried to maintain that same tempo, and being a cleric, you don't have
What
such...
game are you talking about?
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about the...
confusion.
The-
We're talking about the 5-person super
first
party
4-point
game
round,
of
anyway.
Chronicles.
You did that in the Dramarys game? I'm pretty sure that was when that originated. I very distinctly remember having that emotion with that character.
I think that's true. I think the real, yeah, I think you're right. I had a lot more success with it in the 4E game.
You gave, I mean, I would say the experience reward you gave in the 3.5 game was kind of a token reward,
Yeah.
whereas the reward you gave in the 4th edition game was based on a mathematical formula that we could exploit by being superheroes.
But even the 4E game, like that eventually subsided as things got more powerful, more epic, so many more hit points. It's grating on everyone to keep up that level of focus when the monsters have like 200-300 hit points each.
Well, and then you also have to keep that up, figure out what you're supposed to do. Your tactics have to be better, and then you have to do it again because you have to fight 5 battles.
How do you keep track of monster hit points when they all have 200? Who does that? Like, is it?
I do.
Write it down with a pencil.
I write it down on a computer.
Is that really? It takes so long. Like,
It's mental math. That's all I do. I don't use pencils or computers.
The fight ends when I feel like it's over.
Ebo is a computer.
Sometimes I just use invisible ink to say that I'm using some sort
Another
of
trick that I've done in order to make
writing.
things move faster is ending combat early.
Yeah.
Like behind the scenes, just this guy has less hit points than I originally wrote because he's taking forever to kill and it's obnoxious. Or dragging on a combat a little bit longer when it needs to be epic. GM magic stuff in order to make individual things go good.
I personally like combat, but it is something of a cognitive break when you are chasing a plot and then all of a sudden you're, counting your time by 6-second intervals that take 15 real-world minutes or more.
It can get heavy-handed.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the unsolvable one because it's not unsolvable. We just don't know how to do it.
We just won't solve it.
It's the whole thing about where one player or the players are vying for the GM's time, and people fall out of the game, and then the game fails because a lot of the players are consistently bored with the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then that's never good for the GM or anyone. It's like how do you
ways I can see to solve that. I think that more often than not, when that happens, it's more players than we need.
Right.
And that's just bad because the more players you get, the more it exacerbates every single one of the problems we just talked about with players.
Yeah, we never. I think one of the problems with that is we never call games casual games, and they end up being casual games, at least to me. And I'm like, that's not what I signed up for. There's like casual, like Ebo said, where a game is it's relaxed, people are chatting, they're having a good time, drinking, whatever.
Yeah.
Where people are, it's as much a social activity like outside of the game as it is a social activity within the game.
Yeah.
And then there's the hardcore games where you're playing and you're focused, you're getting stuff done, and you're role playing the whole time. And I think it's important to differentiate between those at the very beginning of the game. Like say or make it clear one way or another that you're running a casual or a hardcore game, so the expectations are not one way or the other.
We've really had
disappointed.
this feeling in our group for, I'd say, a good 5 years or more, and I think this is the first time we've ever really quantified it into good words.
And you guys are the ones who get to hear it first.
This is a very liberating moment, spiritually uplifting.
Spiritually,
this is psychiatric.
it's the difference between is role playing something we're kind of doing on this evening, or is this game night?
Here's one just a thought. This is a little bit of a tangent.
Like that game night.
A little bit less of the therapy stuff. This is just a thought for a solution, a possible partial solution, we'll call it. If you're running this game, if you're the GM, try to know from the start who in the game is going to be fulfilling what role in your story, and try to specifically cater to the people who you think are going to feel entitled to more of your time before they come seeking it for other reasons. I don't know. I don't really think that... I'm a kind of a driver in games. I like to do things. I like to progress plots and do things on my own. And I don't feel like I really need a whole lot of spoon feeding. But if somebody else is taking up a lot of spotlight, I will basically, if I'm not involved in it at all, I can be involved in a plot where I'm not the central character, but if I'm not involved in it at all, I'm going to be looking for something else to do.
You want to get in.
I want to be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of the big things that made Zero Heaven Part 2 fail, was that...
Episode 4.
Episode 4.
Who cares?
It's the third one I ran.
They're
Okay,
all the
so
same.
what is it?
No,
Just
it
so
don't ask.
Doesn't matter.
It's very important.
Everyone should know what we're talking about.
Episode
Anyway.
4.
This one failed because
Revenge of the something.
I'm pretty
Oh, okay.
sure that
We're getting a hate mail on that.
one person,
Trivia right.
one or two people had the idea at the beginning to take. It's really distracting.
Sorry. I had to crack my back a little bit. And
I mean, it was awesome.
auto chiropraxis.
I guess it was two people that started with ideas for one. They'd usually take up 1 to 2, 1 hour maybe max of game session time. And then that just slippery sloped into other people doing that because they wanted their own
individual
I would
thing.
say
they wanted their own stuff.
If you want to say when I thought it became glaring is when characters started taking international flights without the rest of the group and doing their vacation during game time.
Okay,
that was me. I'm sorry.
Also me.
I'm making it sound like I'm accusing somebody else.
Actually,
That was my doing.
All three of the players here, the players, not including the GM, Jeff, all Ebo, myself, and Ed, all took vacations independent of everyone else.
Not really vacations, but
you were the ones who were in
in
it. The other players were bored while you three were doing stuff. That's
Yeah,
probably
and
why
yes.
you three enjoyed the game.
Well, I mean,
I'll admit I got kind of bored.
outing to my maximum level right now.
He's got his pout face on
yeah,
really
even then, I'm like, I want to stop what I'm doing, and I tried towards the end to make it as quickly as I could, but it's even hard to try to do that if you have an idea for
No.
something. But one of the things about that was that we had. To tell you how bad this was, it was us three spending a lot of
Terrible,
time
Jeff.
in game. We actually got the casual gamers who were there and aren't necessarily always in it to do their own thing, which
Without the rest
took
of
as much time as the stuff we were
I think
doing.
it bears noting that you two, Lee and Ebo, were playing twin brothers.
We were
in
playing
this game,
Twin
Mhm.
Brothers.
and you still did your own thing. Often
that
enough.
was.
Okay. I
We were
really
trying to be
want to move
opposites.
this into the solution sphere
Okay.
because I have something I've always
I
been
would
thinking
too.
about doing that I haven't whipped
I
out
want
in
to hear
the
a
game yet.
solution.
And this is a potential solution. This is totally undone.
Fix all of our
This
problems.
is not a solution.
Is it possible to do something like just asking the players, hey, this is a sandbox, you got to come up with your own thing, but at least involve one other person when you go do stuff, or at least involve two other people, or hey, you'll get rewarded if you bring people into the game who are sort of sitting out.
I think it's important for the players to realize when there's a problem and try to help. I think the players should be helping the GM to an
Here-
extent instead of just being assholes.
Here's an idea for something that's similar to that I think might work if you're willing to go this extra mile. Is like a lot of groups will like establish officially how their characters will interrelate and what they have to do with one another and why they're a group before they start a game. But if you don't want to go that direction necessarily, which you might not, you might want to, develop that sort of thing. You could basically say, like, within 2 or 3 sessions, you guys should, in or out of character, establish some mode by which you are going to begin to come together and function as a group.
Mhm.
And I mean, I would emphasize doing that out of character because it's something that I don't feel like we've ever really done or would think to do, just on our own steam.
The only
Yeah.
game I can think of where a lot of people had their own stuff going on and it still managed to seem like we were all doing our own thing, but we were all functioning as a group was Sean ran a game that we all affectionately call the Evil Game,
Yes.
where we played evil characters who were bound together by some crazy thing, but he addressed before the game that even though we were evil people with our own plots and scheming, that he wanted us all to remain a group, outside of the game,
It was
that
basically-
his idea was that we would all stay together, and we all, for the most part,
Well,
we rode with it.
It was so cinematic that it was just like, if Ed's off doing his own ruler of the evil world thing, I'm paying attention because it's interesting.
yeah, and
Yes.
it was easy
That
for
is
us.
different.
Yeah,
One of the things was
it's not sandbox.
That-
It's-
that was a part of the plot, though.
yeah.
And that was expected to happen.
Right, but what I'm saying is, it was addressed before the game started that we all had our own things we wanted to do, but he wanted us all to stay together, and I think that if we were a little bit more open about it, that it wouldn't be unsuccessful.
Honestly, and that came up in that game simply because we were all evil and he didn't want us to just run around pooping places for no good reason.
I would love to run around shitting on things.
But I think what you're bringing up here is
Yeah,
that
up to the language.
it just stands to reason in even a good game or a whatever normal game that mentioning that is probably good too.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that there's no inappropriate time. Like if you think that your game is getting flushed by like impossible characters running around doing their own things completely aside of what the rest of the players are doing to the point where it's disruptive, I don't think that there's an inappropriate time to, step back and say, whoa, guys, this is not what I intended, and if I'm going to continue the game, we should work together to move this in an appropriate direction.
The GM can reel it in.
Yeah, they can.
And you might too want to take a short break from the game, and when everybody's sort of ready to start going again, just broach the subject from this point forward, maybe try to implement a little bit more of this and a little bit less of this.
Yeah.
I have a few things actually on the
I like
Mage
things.
Awakening
I
game.
Oh yeah,
Back to the mage one.
You're
Yep,
talking
back-
about Futura Draconis?
You stop
Yes,
that. God, it is not
Futura
helpful to hear the
Draconis.
Future of the Dragon, baby.
Yeah, we know what that means.
Okay.
you came up with that by yourself, did you?
It's language. I don't remember.
So
Okay, keep going,
Jeff had
Brian.
talked about where we don't usually try to bring other people into our own personal plots. I didn't start off doing that, but I swear that Jeff and I had a discussion about that at some point during that game, or I had come to the realization when talking about Jeff about that I tried to do it with other people, and we were almost all of us into that game, which was actually impressive because there's quite a few people there. The only difference was, here's another point, was that when you have a person who does not show up all the time, they are going to want to do their own thing, and they are going to be bored. And I don't know what to do about that.
A game like Mage or any of the World of Darkness games really has a unique, well, I'm going to call it a disadvantage for this purpose, characteristic in that each character they buy their own network of like background NPCs, contacts, and allies and so forth. And so like you can have a character who comes in and he already has a way to start working his character sheet for spotlight time, because it's like, well, I'm going to use my contacts and allies and start doing this. And it's kind of tricky because it's like, of course they have that. Those NPCs have not been relevant to anything that's been going on so far because their character hasn't been here. But now you can't tell them that they're not role playing, even though they're just doing their own thing.
Yeah, it's a very story driven system when we play it, and I mean it is.
Players who don't show up is a conversation best reserved for a later date, I think. But
we could run on that one for a long
player
time.
styles. But anyway, but yeah, that's just my take on it.
I thought that was, and I didn't even think about it, and I just kind of slipped in my mind to keep trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have done it once before, but I think we've either done it on purpose or an accident a couple times, but nothing that has really ever stuck, and nothing that I don't think anyone else has really noticed at the time.
Yeah.
I think, well, actually, what I'd like to ask is, does anyone else have any any particularly strong reasons that games fail that we haven't covered?
We didn't really talk in too much detail about like the distraction from your game because of new interests, but that's sort of self-explanatory, I think.
I mean,
It's like,
not everyone, but most people like new shinies, and new shinies is a syndrome that Ed suffers from more than anyone else I know. But at the same
like a
time,
raccoon.
we all do a little bit, when Ed's talking about a new system, I start to get jazzed for it, and then it's easy for me to roll with it when he suggests running a new game instead of saying, "Hey, no, you should finish the games you're running."
The problem with wanting to play in a new system is that something has to go, and I always try to make the point when I was thinking about starting a new system to pick one of the two games that he's gonna inevitably drop and just tell him to keep running it.
Well, it isn't
that never happens though.
It isn't exactly Sophie's choice. I can always kill one of my babies. It's
We
disturbingly easy for me.
We started trying to behind the scenes route him into which game to drop and which game to keep.
He does have two babies.
He's pretty receptive to that.
I'm very
actually.
susceptible to heckling.
Yeah, I heckled you into running at least two different systems.
Yeah,
and
okay,
I'm
well,
working
I'll do
on
that
three.
then.
We don't.
No big deal.
It's important to note
You
that
got
we
me.
don't condone either killing or spanking babies or children, unless it's metaphorically.
I
no,
you can
this
kill all
is-
the
Or
metaphorical
deserved.
No, I'll beat my metaphorical babies if we're talking about babies chronicles that I'm running in various systems.
No,
Yeah, no, I'll
if you
destroy
find-
them.
If you find yourself being a GM
darlings.
who suffers from new shiny syndrome, I think being honest with yourself about failed games is important, Ed. And also, like Ed said before, though, running shorter games is good. Like if you have that problem, make sure you're not running these big, massive epics because you're never gonna finish.
I had interrupted you early on when we were talking
I don't
about
remember that already.
when it's okay to stop a game, when it's the right time to just quit it, when to allow it to be failed, to identify when it's failed. And I think for our group, and I would guess this goes for a lot of groups, is that if you're shelving a game, it's done. I mean, it's the exception, not the rule, that you bring it back.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, but yeah, there are times when it's better to just proclaim the game dead.
Yeah, and move on to something that you're more excited about, the players are more excited about. You know, I mean, if you're losing interest in a game, like rapidly, there's probably a good reason for it. If you can't easily see a solution or come up with a good reason why, you know, then move on to something else that you think you'd be more suited to running or your players would want to play more. You know, it's all about having fun in the end.
It is. It's like a risk. It's like if you push through it, you might have even more fun in the end, but maybe you won't. It's a hard judgment call.
Yeah, and you know, in the end, running a game and playing in a game shouldn't really be a chore.
It shouldn't.
And keeping a failed game going long, longer than it should be, it is a chore.
Two
basically
failed
anyone.
sessions in a row can kill a game.
Yep, it can. And I mean, it
has
2 failed sessions in a row, by all rights, ought to. If you can't bring something out that you like after seeing one go wrong, then you might just want to say, you know, it's been a good ride, but we should try something else. Maybe we can break the rules and bring this back one day, but not next week.
Yeah, or at least take a long, hard look at what went wrong.
yeah.
And you can ask your players for feedback.
Yeah, don't assume that you always know what the issue was.
Yeah. Because your players might know better than you.
And I mean, don't assume that if you're not having fun running it, that people aren't having fun playing it. You just need to resolve how you can, you know,
Fix one of the two.
yeah. Because if the players are having fun playing it and you think that there's some measure you can take to start enjoying it again, then it's probably worth it.
Probably.
I think
Sure, I'll agree with that.
I think that's about it for that.
I
And
agree.
We'll move right on.
Shut it. Go.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to episode 4 of the House Rule Podcast.
Kabits.
We would, as we continually repeat, love to hear from you. You can go to our website, www.houserule.com, and use our forums. We
That's where
have
it's at.
some blog posts that might clear up some things that might
That's
be
where everything is at.
dangling. Also, you could email us at podcast@houserule.com. Yes, I cannot beg you any more strongly for feedback. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, the information about the music we used in the show will be found on our blog posts, and also if you have any questions about any of the music that we use or anything like that, just go over there and check it out.
Yeah.
I think that's
That
really all we need to talk about.
A wrap.
Yep, super wrap.
Thanks for listening.